Jambo, everybody, and Karibu, Kenya. We are at the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, Nairobi Nursery. It is 3 p.m. We shall be bringing you our orphan baby elephants here in the nursery. At the moment, we've got 12 baby elephants who are here in the nursery because they are orphans. They've all been rescued from different parts of the country and all having different reasons for being orphans. And so we rescued them and reared them here for approximately 3 years. And any time after the age of 3, we start to reintroduce them back into the world. We will always reintroduce them to Tsavo East National Park and Kibwezi Forest, a process that will take them a minimum of about 5 years before they start to make friends among the wild herds, who later on invite them and adopt them in their families. And once they all get adopted, then we set them free and let them become wild once again. And once they get adopted, they'll be trained by the wild elephants on how to stay back into the wild naturally. They'll be protected against all other dangers out in the wild by the wild elephants. They'll also be warned against human beings by the wild elephants, which means they will behave like any other elephant out there. And when we see that happen, we can successfully say we've achieved our target, because the main target here is to rescue them, hand-rear them, and later on reintroducing them back into the wild. Different reasons have caused all these babies to be left orphans, and human-wildlife conflict is one of the major reasons that has caused them to be left orphans. And human-wildlife conflict is a big problem in our country because there is always an increase in the population of man or human beings compared to the space or size of land. And this has caused human beings to occupy areas that belong to wild animals. And that is why areas where these animals have known originally to browse and look for water have now been occupied by people. Migratory routes of wild animals no longer exist. They've been occupied by farmers. And people are doing farming, building structures, and doing lots of developments in these areas. And that's why if these animals want to migrate from one area to the other, they find it very difficult. They'll encounter the crops and the structures, and the owners want to fight them. In the course of the fight, sometimes the mothers are killed, or the babies are identified, rescue them. Let's go back to the elephants because they've already come in for the bottles. As usual, the first elephant to get in is Mukoka, who is about 2 years old, who was rescued from northern part of Tsavo East National Park, who is a very lucky elephant to have been rescued because we've got our aerial surveillance that was on patrol, and one of the team members saw some footprints of a young elephant on the ground. They were very keen to find out why these footprints are all alone and it is a young elephant. They tried to follow them up to the river but could not find the baby. The same thing happened the next day, and our teams on the ground were also mobilized to find out where these footprints headed and if this baby is still alive or not. But after 3 days, the baby was identified along the river all alone. At a young age of about 7 months, he had just started to learn on how to feed on different types of vegetation. And at 7 months, they cannot feed on enough to survive. They're just learning, chewing and dropping sometimes and swallowing a little bit. And so it meant that he could not have survived out in the wild all alone. It meant that he was an orphan because for all that period, he was all alone. And very lucky to have been identified still alive. So that is why our team was mobilized to ensure that he is rescued and brought in the nursery so that we can give him a second chance to survive back into the world. Right now he's about 2 years old and really adjusted well in the nursery, and we are expecting in a year's time or so he will go to Tsavo and start the process of being reintroduced back into the world. He's the first one to get into the waterhole to roll and enjoy the mud. When they lie down in the mud and roll in the mud, it is fun for them. They are enjoying doing it, but part of the mud stuck on the body protects them from being bitten by some insects. and also from direct sunshine. So despite it being very fun for them, it is also helpful to their body as well. Next to Mukoka is the youngest elephant in the nursery. Her name is Naleku. She's only about a year old. Rescued from the Masai Mara. Also identified in the company of an auntie who had a female, who had a young baby that was lactating. And Naleku's mother is believed to have died from a natural disease. And that's why the auntie was left to take care of her. This auntie could not have provided milk to Naleku because she had her own baby, but she could provide all the protection that was needed. And Naleku, being at the age of about 6 months, meant that she could not have survived because at that age, the teeth are not strong enough to browse and feed on greens. And that's why there was need for her to be rescued. Right now, approximately 1 year old, and so far doing all right in the nursery. We do have Ziwadi coming directly to me, who is about 2 years old, who was rescued from the Masai Mara, who is believed to have been abandoned or left behind by the rest of the family members for reasons we could not tell by then. But later on, she was discovered to be epileptic, and that's why we suspect the rest of the family members left her behind. We are expecting that by the time she'll be ready to go back into the wild, that is the age of about 3 years, she will have come back to normal. We do have the latest arrival in the nursery, an elephant by the name Olorian, who is about almost 18 months. And Olorian was rescued from the Masai Mara. She was identified all alone and observed for some time, hoping and expecting the mother and the rest of the family members to come and collect back the baby, something that did not happen. And if such a thing happens out in the world, we always just don't want to go and pick the baby that has been found right away. We have to find out and ensure that the mother is not around. Oh, thank you, Kyombo. We have to ensure that the mother is not around. So after some time of protecting the baby and searching for the family without success, a decision was made for her to be rescued. She's about almost 18 months and adjusting well in the nursery. She's been with us for slightly over 2 months. We can tell she's made a great improvement, and she's growing strong, and she's becoming more active. And in another month or so, she'll be rolling in the mud just like the others. And because she was very thin when she came in, she's still very sure of on getting inside the mud with the rest, because the others might want to squash her right in the middle. That's why most of the time she will play with the dust on the edges. We do have second oldest, an elephant by the name Nabulou, spraying herself with the mud at the edge. And Nabulou is about 3 years old. She's the second oldest that we've got in the nursery. And since she's a female, she's the second in command in terms of the matriarchal role. Nabulou was rescued from the Masai Mara, also identified all alone, very thin and weak, very much dehydrated and emaciated, a sign that she had been alone without the mother's milk for all that period, that we could not tell how long. But from her condition, she had stayed for quite a long time. So that is why we had to ensure that she's urgently rescued and brought in the nursery. Right now, approximately 3 years old. We do have Maisha, the oldest in the nursery, the main matriarch, the mother figure, the leader of the group. And Maisha is over 3 years, has had 1 bottle and decided to get a mud bath first before getting the second bottle. Maisha was rescued from Sava Conservation Area. The mother is believed to have died from starvation due to the long period of drought that we encountered in the country, causing lots of other animals to die because there was no rain, there was no water, and there was no food. And that's why Maisha was left as an orphan at a very young age of about 8 months. Right now, she's approximately over 3 years. And because she's the oldest female, she's in charge of the rest of the 12 elephants that we've got in the nursery at the moment. Nabulou lying down at the edge of the waterhole, not really wanting to get in. In front of Nabulou is Kyombo, who is about 2.5, almost 3 years. And Kyombo was also rescued from the Masai Mara. He was identified all alone within the park at a young age of below a year old. And that's why we rescued him. Right now, he's approximately almost 3 years, the one lying down in the mud at the moment. Coming in now is Maktau, who is approximately 2.5 years. And Maktau was rescued from a Sava conservation area. And you might be wondering how we named them. Maktau was named after the area he was found, a place called Maktau within Sava West National Park. He was found in a community all alone at the age of about 3 months. Nobody could tell exactly the whereabouts of the mother, but being found in our community suspects that he might have been separated from his family by human beings, and so is a victim of human-wildlife conflict. The names have got a relation to where the elephants came from, or the reasons that caused them to be left orphans, or something significant within the area, or something that happened in the course of the rescue. Walking away is Laro, who is about 2 years old, who was rescued from the Masai Mara Olaro Conservancy, identified alone at a young age of about 7 months, believed to have been separated from her family by human beings. Now she's a victim of human-wildlife conflict. She's just gone to get water from the next water hole at the far end. And next to her is an elephant by the name Roho, who is about 1.5 years, who was rescued from Asava West National Park, whose mother is believed to have been killed by poachers, and that's why he was left alone at about 7 months. Right now, Roho is about 1.5 years old, and so far doing all right in the nursery, despite all the trauma and stress that he went through, having seen what happened to the mother. But we are happy to note that he is adjusting. He's learning slowly by slowly to be independent, trying slowly by slowly to get away from Maisha and Nabulou, which means to make a great bull when he goes out into the world. Nabulou at the end, lying down at the edge of the waterhole, and Kyombo at the edge, lying down on the other side of the waterhole, and Mukoka mounting on top of Kyombo on the other side. Naleku next to the two. We have been joined by 2 more elephants, and Naboishu, the youngest among the 2, or the smallest among the 2 that have just come in. And Naboishu is a 2-year-old elephant, having been rescued from the Masai Mara, the mother having died from a natural disease, the baby left in the company of the whole family, being protected by the rest of the family members, but obviously could not have survived because there was no mother to provide milk. And that is why there was need for him to be rescued. And that's why he came in the nursery. Then lastly, we've got Kiasa at 3 years old. And Kiasa was rescued from Sava Conservation Area. She's a drought victim. The mother is believed to have died from starvation due to drought. And that's why Kiasa was left alone. So that makes a total of 12 elephants that we've got in the nursery at the moment, all under our care for the first 3 years before we start the process of reintroducing them back into the wild, a process that takes place within Sava Conservation Area. We've got 3 reintroduction centers with our keepers. One is based within the northern part of Savo East, Idumba Stockades, southern part of Savo East, Voi Stockades, and we've got one within the Kibwezi Forest, which is called the Umani Springs Stockades. Our keepers will monitor the orphans on a daily basis, leading them out in the park, letting them interact with different groups of wild elephants and communicate and make friends and learn more about being out in the world. And after some time, they get invited and adopted in a herd of wild elephants who will train them, who will protect them, who will warn them, and they will have become as wild as any other elephant out there. We are happy to note that about 35 newborn wild babies have been born from our ex-orphans that have gone back into the wild. That tells a big success of the reintroduction part of them being set free out in the wild. It is a bit warm today, and the elephants are feeling actually hot and they want to cool themselves. And that's why you can see everybody is trying to get into the mud. Right in the middle is Maisha, the oldest female. The small one lying down is Roho. Standing next to Roho is Kiasa. Behind Roho on the other end is Nabulou. And we do have Laro on this side as well. Behind Laro is Maktau. And Naboshu at the edge on the other side. They want to cool themselves because it is warm enough for them to do so. We provide the water hole and let them do what they want to do. Sometimes they want just to play with the dust. Sometimes they just want to feed on the vegetation. And sometimes they want to roll in the mud as they are doing now. You might be wondering where they were coming from. They were coming from Nairobi National Park. We are inside Nairobi National Park. There is no fence between us and the park. And so the elephants or the orphans have the right of way so that they can learn by natural instinct on how to behave as wild elephants. Always accompanied by the keepers to provide assistance whenever needed when they are out in the park. We don't have wild elephants in Nairobi National Park. We only have our orphans, and that's why our keepers have to be there with them to assist when necessary. So earlier on, we were talking about different reasons that have caused all these babies to be left orphans, and human-wildlife conflict is one of the reasons that we mentioned. We do have ivory poaching, that is a second reason that has caused some of them to be left orphans. And a few of them are orphans from natural reasons, like old age, natural diseases, and starvation back into the world. And all this happening to the mothers when the babies are still very young, at an age where they would not have survived without the mother's milk and also without protection against other dangers. Remember, elephants will always stay in herds or families or groups. They'll always protect one another while in the family. And that is why if one happens to lose the mother and is left alone, then they don't get milk and they don't get protection. If one happens to lose the mother and is still with the rest of the family members, then the family members will provide protection but no milk. So the young one will starve to death if one was under the age of 2 years. And that's why we have to come in and ensure that we rescue them. Elephants have got a very thick skin, about 1 inch, but very sensitive at the same time. And the ticks can easily penetrate through. And that is why rolling in the mud is very helpful for them to ensure that they are protected from the insects. You can see most of them using the trunk to throw the water on the body. The trunk is the hand as well as the nose, and it is the most sensitive part on an elephant body. The trunk alone has more than 40,000 different types of muscles, and that is why an elephant without a trunk cannot survive perfectly out in the wild. The tusks on an elephant are also very important and only good when on a live elephant, because the elephants need their tusks for defense in case of any dangers out there, to cut down some branches when they're feeding, to dig down to get some water during the dry seasons along the dry rivers. And that's why they are only good and helpful on a live elephant. And that's why the elephants need to be left to have their tasks. They don't need to be killed because somebody is interested in the tasks, because they are not good once they're not on a live elephant. They'll not help you. Everybody enjoying the mud. Maktau and Laro still inside the water, the mud. Mukoka, after having a good mud bath, trying to dry himself in the dry dust, together with the Naleku and Nabulou. Kyombo serious on feeding on the greens. And Ziwadi at the far end also feeding on greens. Kiasa walked away to get water from the next water hole at the far end. Maktau, Laro, Naboishu on the ground. Together with Roho right in the middle. You might have realized Maisha coming in very fast because she had Roho make some noise. That is the role of the matriarch. You can see Maisha and Kiasa right over there surrounding Roho. Roho on the ground. Maisha trying to tell Roho to wake up with the leg. You can see assisting Roho to wake up. So if you're joining us now, welcome. We are at the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, Nairobi Nursery. 12 baby elephants before us now, all orphans, and that's why they're here. Rescued from different parts of the country with different reasons. And that's why they stay with us for 3 years before we start to reintroduce them back into the world. We feed them on intervals of 3 hours, day and night. They have just finished the 3 p.m. milk feed. They're enjoying to roll in the mud and cool themselves or dry themselves in the dry dust. And someone to feed on greens like Kyombo is doing right behind me. The Sheldrick Wildlife Trust does not only take care of orphan elephants and rhinos. We do have other projects that we undertake. For example, we have got mobile veterinary units. We've got anti-poaching teams. We've got a community project. We've got an aerial surveillance. And all this is working together with the Kenya Wildlife Service to ensure that all animals are safe in the parks. For example, our mobile veterinary units with KWS-sponsored vets will go and treat any injured animal that is found out there. We've got our anti-poaching teams that will patrol the parks together with the Kenya Wildlife Service Rangers to ensure that there are no poachers in the parks, there are no people burning charcoal in the parks, and there's nothing bad that is happening in the park. The park is safe for all wild animals. We've got our community project that will go around the communities that are neighboring the parks and the reserves, giving them education on how to coexist and stay peacefully neighboring one another with these wild animals. The same community project will extend that to the schools neighboring the parks and the reserves, educating the children on the importance of these wild animals in general, why they need to be protected and how, so that when they're fully grown, they'll help care for them. So all that is done with the support and the help of Kenya Wildlife Service to ensure that all is safe for all wild animals in our country in general. Everybody having enjoyed the mud. You can see they're all relaxing outside. Some wants to play with the dust and feed as well. You might be interested in supporting the work that is being done by the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. Yes, you are welcome to do that. You only need to go on our website and find out how you can donate, how you can support, different ways you can do it. And one of the ways is by adopting an elephant, which is costing $50 a year. You can adopt an elephant for yourself or as a gift to a friend. And once you do it as a gift, the gift recipient will receive the updates every month. But if you do it for yourself, you get the updates every month. You also get a special watercolor painting, which is done by Angela Sheldrick. You'll also get a keeper's diary, which is written every day by the keepers, telling different stories from different orphans. And all that will be brought to you on monthly basis on your account. You can also donate towards the other projects that are being done by the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, like the anti-poaching teams, the community projects, the mobile veterinary units, and our dog unit as well, our aerial surveillance as well. All that will be ensuring that all animals are safe within our country. Everybody has had a good mud bath today, including Ziwadi at the far end, who is enjoying it now, being assisted by the keepers, and Oloria next to me. Ziwadi having all the fun. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this live feeding here at 3 p.m. We will set the elephants free to go out into the park for the rest of the day until at 5 in the evening when they come back for bed. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed what you've seen, and thank you very much for supporting what we're doing. We are going to continue doing it because of your support. We are able to do it. Continue to keep safe as we shall continue to take care of the orphans. Thank you, everybody.